without further ado, I've been looking forward to this talk ever since we put these together because, well, I think I might have heard every one of Dave's stories, but tonight I'll be able to find out if that's true or not. But anyway, Dave has been a very good friend of mine for the last 25 years. And we met each other when they moved into, we had a lot on the Fox River, and that the next door house sold, and then one day new people were there, and I was out mowing the lawn, and Dave came out and introduced himself to me, and that's when we first met. That was 1997, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so we've been living next door to each other ever since then, and happy to call him my fishing buddy and my good friend, Captain Dave Resop. The floor is yours.
I'll tell you a story. I was born at Berlin Hospital, January 15th, 43. Graduated Berlin High in 1961. Worked at Realist, if everybody remembers that. So September to 61 till September 62. Then I went to Green Bay Vocational School, and I was an apprentice to the school. That was 9 months. And then you got graduated, and then you looked for a job. But I got lucky. My dad bumped into a salesman whose barber just lost his apprentice, and I got hired. So that worked out good.
So you went to school to be a barber?
Yeah. I didn't like school. That was only a 9-month course. So we lived in Oshkosh from 63 to 68. There's where I met Ruth. We were married at St. Mary's in 66. We moved here in 68 of March. Then you see, I'm trying to read my own notes here. Oh, then in 66, Vietnam War was on, and I lost my deferment because I made my journeyman license, but I had 2 more licenses to fill. I had to get a master's yet and a shop manager's. If I figured I went in the Army, I would never come back and do them. So Ruthie talked with somebody, and we joined the National Guards over in Berlin, which was good because a lot of my friends were there. I joined there on my birthday in 66. No, yeah, 66. And we were married in May of 66. In 67, I went to Fort Ord for 4 months. And this was funny because I had a big salary of $80 a month. And I would call home twice a week. I'd sneak off and call home for 45 minutes of time. And my phone bills were $80 a month. So the only money I had for spending is I had my clippers with me, and I would charge $1 for a haircut. The PX charges 75 cents, and a Mexican charged 50. But if you went to the PX, they put the clipper here, it spun the chair, and you were done. And the guys are all trying to grow their hair out to come home. So, otherwise, you look good with a cap on. That was my spending money. Okay. Well, that was funny. I'll come back to that. I'm talking to Ruth one night. I just hung up, and her water broke. And a half hour later, her dad comes, take her to the hospital. Brand new Chrysler. The whole back seat, floor, everything is covered with plastic. But he got her to the hospital, and the nurse said, "Don't push, the doctor's not here yet." And she kept asking the nurse, "What time is it?" See, she got there May 30th, and she didn't want David John born May 30th, so 4 minutes after midnight she let him come. He was born May 31st. Well, then we moved here in March of...
So you weren't there when he was born,
No, I was at Fort Ord.
Okay.
We moved here, I didn't see him till he was about 2.5 months old. I didn't get back till August sometime, I think early August. We moved here in March of 68.
To Princeton.
Yeah. We lived above Sadie Ruzek. Maybe some of you know her. She was a widow, new widow, and my sister boarded with her. She lived downstairs, and she got room and board for I think $6 a week, and she was gaining weight because Sadie loved to cook. But Sadie didn't want to be alone, so she'd happy if somebody there. But Schneebergers lived there for years, and they moved out, and it was a 2-bedroom apartment there. It was perfect. It was a half a mile from work, you know. I could walk to work. It was good, and we could afford it. So we moved in. Well, a little while later, Sadie decided to sell, so we bought, and then she rented from us, which was great because it cost $100 a month. That was the payments with taxes. And Sadie's rent was same as ours, $65, and that paid all the expenses. So all I had to do was get the $100 a month. And Reed Mavis got the deal for me. I was afraid to ask him for a loan because I didn't have 20% down them years. But he got it for me. He did me a real favor. I thank you for that. Well, anyhow, then later on, Ruth and I took a postal test. This is back in 81 maybe. We both passed. She got hired in Green Lake, part-time. And later on, I interviewed in Ripon, and I got through the apprenticeship program there. It was, I think, 90 days or something, and I got hired there. I had a friend working there, put in a good word for me.
Can I ask you about your barbering though, Dave? How many years did you barber downtown?
Oh, from 68 till 82.
Any good stories of?
Oh, I'll come to that.
Okay.
There's a lot of stories there. I got some real dandies, but I'll tell you anyhow. I don't care. I'm not that way. I sprayed about about a dozen dogs. Never got bit. I was lucky. And I hiked about 10 miles a day. Rain or shine. Never got struck by lightning, so I was lucky, I guess. I retired, and Ruth retired 3 months later. But I got a good job because I had good vacation pay. Not like they have now. Now they get 10 days of sick leave, and I had oodles of sick leave because for every hour you worked, for every 8 hours worked, you got so much sick leave, and for every 8 hours worked, you had so much vacation time. So it depends on how much you worked. And when I retired, I had 80 hours sick leave unaccounted for. And the girl said to me, "You can get paid for that. But you can get paid for your military time too if you pay back. So when you're in service, you pay Social Security. You don't pay civil service." So I said, "Okay, I'll pay it back." I made $380, I think, in 4 months or something like that. I didn't pay civil service on it, so I said, "Okay, I'll pay it." So it was only about $18 I had to pay, but it was 35 years interest on that, and I wound up paying like $118. But that money paid back because that gives me $20 a month every month now that I wouldn't have gotten. So instead of retiring at 21 years, I retired at 22 years. I get paid for 22 years. So she did me a favor. Well then, at one time we had about 5 jobs. I had a barber shop. Ruth was a crossing guard. She worked at the post office.
Oh, God.
We cleaned up my nuts office, and we cleaned the bank. That was before we got postal jobs. Then we finally got rid of the other jobs. Well, anyhow, we had money then, so we took vacations. The first vacation was a trip to Hawaii. First time flying. Almost was the last time. I didn't care much for flying. They guaranteed to bring you down, but I didn't like that. And we landed in Hawaii, and it's August, and it's a rainy month. We didn't know that. It's raining cats and dogs. There's puddles all over 9 inches deep. It drizzled for 5 days out of 6, so we wore sweatshirts 5 days out of 6. We're at the north end where they do the surfing. We're sitting in sweatshirts. I said to the guy, "Take my picture. It's 68 degrees and it's drizzling rain." And the last day, Ruthie says, She took off her shoes, said, I want to walk on the beach. And she started walking to the beach, and she starts running. And I'm laughing. You know why she's running? The sand away from the beach is hot. She was burning her feet. She had to run to the beach where the water was to cool her feet. I didn't know that. It wasn't so funny then after I heard that. Well, Ruth's folks lived in Florida, so every winter I'd get 2 weeks off. We'd go to Florida, spend a few days with them. And then people got smart. They started taking days off in Florida. But I had second seniority, so the other guy took December, and I got my January. If you plan it right, there's a holiday in there. If it lands on a Monday, you got an extra couple days vacation, you know. So instead of charging for 10 days, vacation, you got maybe 14 days, and you only have to pay for 10. And some of those days were your days off, so you didn't have to charge that many. I think when I retired, I had 5 weeks, 3 days vacation.
Dave, I'm starting to realize why it takes so long for a letter to get someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was I going to say now? 5 days, 3 weeks vacation. I don't know, it'll come back to me. But anyhow, that's what that. But we traveled. Her folks went a lot of places, and we wanted to go there. So went to Hawaii, and then we went on a cruise in February to St. Thomas and Puerto Rico. Ruth loved cruising because she didn't have to cook, she didn't have to make beds. All I could say was I ate better at home. I didn't think the food was that good. The ice cream was good, that was about it. Breakfast was pretty good. Oh, the one cruise, we had a priest on board, and he kept needling the cooks. When are you going to have some turkey bacon? There's a lot of Jewish people on board too. That was kind of. We got the joke, but the cooks didn't care. They didn't have any turkey bacon, so it didn't matter. So we traveled, saw the Grand Canyon north and south, Yellowstone 3 times, Custer Park twice. That's my history. Disney World in California. Oh, that was it too. We were getting discharged. Wally and I were doing KP, we talked about it, and we planned the whole thing. His folks would get the car air conditioned, his dad was a mechanic, and drive to California, and our wives would fly. Well, the glitch was his wife was 7 months pregnant, she brought home a 9-month daughter. Don't ever travel with a pregnant woman and a baby. The baby had colic. But we did go from Fort Ord. You get mustered out, and they give you pay to go home, first class, anywhere you want to go. First class airfare they give you, cash. Well, Wally and I were walking back to the barracks, and the MPs came up and dragged him away. He got paid double for his, and he just took it and went. And they brought him back, and he had to pay it back. So we went from there, we went to Knott's Berry Farm, we went to Disney World, drove around to Vegas. Vegas wasn't much them days, not like it is now. I didn't go out after dark, I just traveled, I'm not going. So then we went to Cody, Wyoming, and met an Army buddy, and he took us up in the mountains in his Jeep. We went trout fishing. Well, his dad packed rods and reels for us, not fly rods. He packed the old-fashioned braided black line. You can't cast them with a light sinker. So we're up there, and we're wearing blue jeans, roll up to your knees, and walking in cold waters. We didn't have boots. But every place you thought there was a fish, there was a fish. You couldn't believe it. I found out later they just planted the thing in the early when we got there. We had a good time. You walk across the stream, and I'm on an island, and I take the rod, and I just whip it around and throw it in. And I had 4 nice trout laying in a puddle of water like that, you know. So I think Wally and his dad didn't catch anything. They didn't know how, but Scott had boots, and him and I caught fish. But that was nice. We're up 8,000 feet, and Scott, that's the first time he took us to breakfast. First time I ever had potatoes for breakfast. Scrambled eggs and potatoes at 4 o'clock in the morning. but Scott packed sandwiches and beer, so we were all right. We didn't starve to death. That was a good trip, you know. And I tried to get a hold of him in the last 3 years. I can't contact him. I think he's gone. I don't know. But that was a fun trip. Oh, then on the way home, we're coming home, and we're not in a big hurry. We're in Dakota. We get in Dakota, and there's no rooms. Oh, great. So the landlord of one inn called this lady and the family. They moved into a trailer in the backyard, and Wally and his family got upstairs, and Ruthie and I got the downstairs bed. At least we had a place to stay for the night. I called my dad, and I said, we'll be home in a couple days. He said, well, don't hurry. I said, why? Well, the guards are in Milwaukee. Father Grappy has got a big riot going on down there. This is... He says, don't hurry, but they'll be home Saturday. I said, so will we. So we get home on Saturday, we have a drill, we show up, and the sergeant gives us a drill chewing out, because we didn't call in, we didn't bust our tail to get there. And I was on the anti-sniper team, and I was supposed to be there, but I didn't get there. So that was later. So anyhow, we're going to get extra duty. What you can say about it? Nothing. So Wally did all the typing for this sergeant. So the sergeant had no typing, no form to do up for a whole month. He was in charge of the armory. So about 1 o'clock he comes up, he says, you know the extra duty we got? I says, yeah, I took care of it, he says. You gotta know somebody, you know. He was a good friend, he still is. I'll tell you some stories too later on. We went to Dollywood. Ruthie and I traveled to Dollywood. Went to Canada 3 times. I went fishing there a couple times. Never again. Every time I went fishing in Canada, I came home and I was sick for a week. You can't drink their water. You can't use their ice cubes. You know, and I ran out of stuff and used some of their ice cubes, and I got sick. I should have went to a doctor, but I just toughed it out. We drove. We went to Alaska twice. Once we flew up, and once we took the Inland Passage. You're on this boat for a whole day. You're going up this fjord for miles and miles and miles to see calving. And you can't get within 10 miles of calving because of a big calving, there's a tsunami, and that's not good, not healthy. So, and these people are there 6 and 7 times that they've done this same trip. But see, they live in Seattle. They get on a bus, they get on a plane. They don't pay $1,200 to fly there and back.
Right.
And they live like kings and queens for 13 days for about $700 or $800. A lot of nightlife if you want it. It's fun when they carve stuff out of ice or chocolate. They carve it out of chocolate, and then they let you turn you loose, and you can go break it off and eat it. And one time we were there, the waves were so high that they had a swimming pool up there. They had nets over it because the waves were so high, the water's coming out of the pool. And one night we had 20-footers. Ruth went to bed. She was sick, and you walk like a drunk. It just throws you against the wall. And so this ain't worth it. I went and slept. And here, the first cruise we had bunk beds, uppers and lowers, birth control beds I call them. But when you wake up in the morning, your stomach sloshes all night, and the first thing you do is eat, then you feel good, because you just don't feel good until you eat something. That was the first cruise. Second cruise I think was, the second cruise is funny. Ruth wanted a window. She gets across the way. She has to have a window. So we get a room with a window, with a lifeboat in front of it. I mean, I didn't really care. She couldn't complain. She got a window. We drove to the end of Florida one time with her dad, and we waved to Fidel. We went down there twice, and I never got to see the museum the guy's got. Mel Fisher's museum was, he found that treasure chest, and all that treasure. I never got to see that. I don't think I want to drive that far again though. Oh, we took a second honeymoon trip on a bus to Washington D.C. and they took us to this real fancy restaurant. You get a piece of meat like this and some gravy, a couple pieces of asparagus, and a guy across me, it looked like a retired farmer. He had big hands, big belly. He says, "Was that the hors d'oeuvre? Is that the meal?" I says, that was it, I think. You know. And then this one guy, we were on a bus trip one time. This one guy had to have a beer so bad. He went to Canada. And he paid $18 for a bottle of beer. He was really thirsty. You know. Oh, we were in Washington D.C. for this honeymoon trip. And I stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching HBO. And you got to be up at 6 o'clock to get going. So I practically slept in my clothes. But I sit on the bus and I sleep. I don't care about houses and cars. I just sleep. I can sleep real good. I wake up and we're in Canada. And
Washington D.C.
yeah, we went across the border into Canada. And I said, no passports them days. I said to Ruth, "Where are we?" She's, "We're in Canada." I said, "How we get here?" She said, "We drove across." She said the border guard came on and she asked everybody where they're from. I never knew she existed. I was out. I didn't know. Ruth answered the questions. She didn't wake me up, thank goodness. Those are some of the things. Niagara Falls, well, you put on this plastic cap and you walk around. I didn't take the flight because I thought, all I'm going to see is water going over the falls and tops of roofs. I couldn't really see that as really a great deal, great thing, you know. Oh, we went to Germania a lot of times. Years ago, the first year we were here, we went to Germania. Walter had a dance in the part of the building during the hunting season. And so we went to the dance. So the next day I took the wife there and drove her around and showed her the building. The siding was cedar, some pieces were missing. It was really rough on the outside, really rough. But inside it had a good dance floor. I'm gonna tell you a story anyhow. It's a barbershop story. It's about this guy, young guy from Milwaukee. He comes to Germania and he goes duck hunting all day.
Oh no.
And he don't get nothing. He goes to the bar at night and he's celebrating, and he's celebrating. He's got to take a pee. One bathroom, and there's a line. He can't wait. He starts walking out, and he walks out, and there's a trash can, and there's two legs sticking out of the trash can. This gal fell headfirst in a trash can. So being a gentleman he is from Milwaukee, he took her out, and being grateful like she was, she took him home for the weekend. So Monday he phoned his partner, and he says, "Partner, sell everything you got in Milwaukee. We're moving it all to Germania. They throw away better things here than you can buy in Milwaukee." Walter had that on his card. I never forgot that story. I don't have the card, but I never forgot that story because it was things like that I just don't forget. Okay, did anybody here know Steady Cleveter? Okay, Steady Cleveter was a little guy, right? Not too heavy. This is back in the 40s, probably, where we had a local warden, Dan Trainer. And sturgeon are running, like they always do. And Steady's watching the sturgeon. And he gets the idea. He took a loop of rope, put it in the water, and the sturgeon, as the tail comes up, and he caught the sturgeon by the tail. It can be done. I know it can be done. I never did it, though. Anyhow, and the sturgeon's pulling him in, and he's struggling with the sturgeon, and there's a big splashing. And Steady hears his voice. "What are you doing there, Steady?" He don't look up, he just loosens the rope. Then he turns around and he says, "Hi, Dan." He says, "I was just helping him over the rocks." I think Bernie Ming told me that story. You remember him. Did everybody ever remember Smokey?
Yep.
Smokey was a retired guy, but he played drums or accordion. Thin guy, maybe 120 pounds at the most. He's walking down the street one day. It's a hot day. Got a straw hat, can of worms in one hand, a fishbowl over his shoulder. He looked like a 75-year-old Huck Finn. He goes to by Rivers Tavern, puts the pole down, puts the worms in the shade, and I'm watching him. And I yelled to him, "You can't catch a fish in there." And he looks at me and he says, "Oh, I might catch a sucker." He had a good sense of humor. A lot of fun. Oh, across from me was Bernard's Tavern. Every day, 4 o'clock, Schneeberger would come in and get a Chief Oshkosh beer, 50 cents. He comes in and Henry's not there, He walks around the bar, puts 50 cents on a till, takes the bottle out, opens up, sets it on the bar, and goes around to drink his beer before he goes home. So the next day I saw Henry, and I said, boy, you got a real nice bar then. Nobody in town's got a self-service bar like you. But he didn't think it was funny. But I thought it was. And then the big four would get there. Doc Garrow, Rashevsky, Schneeberger, and Beadle. Doc didn't drink, but he would always be in on it. So then they have jam sessions. Oh, I got to tell you about Prohibition. Just I heard from Bernie Ming. We had a guy in town named Jess Ladwig. I'll mention names because he's dead. He was a bootlegger. And Jess Ladwig is in a truck with his driver, and they're coming through town, and they get stopped by the feds. They weren't tipped off they were coming to town. And the fed's got a gun in his hand, and he hangs the gun over the window of the car. And, boys, can I look at the back of your truck? Oh, sure, Jess says, go ahead. He pokes the driver pops the clutch, the gun went off, and shot the driver in the leg. And Jess sets the driver out ashore here by Hartman's Jewelry and takes off. But see, Jess had a hideout at the Princeton Cottages. But them days it was all brush and just trails, not cottages like it is now. And the sheriff would think they knew he was there, but the federal guys didn't know he was there. That's the story Ming told me. Oh, let's see. Oh, I got to tell you another story. This guy named Leo, he's a carpenter. He comes in the shop about once a month. And it's a Saturday, and he's always drinking. And he was in World War II, and in England. And he always told me how you treated the English girls in England. They wouldn't do nothing on the king's grass. You couldn't do nothing with them on the king's grass. And he goes on and on and on. And I hear the story every time he comes. So there's a guy sitting there, and I thought, I'm going to get him today. And this guy comes in, it's warm, short sleeves, tie, hat. He's been in before. And I'm edging him on, and he's really going to it. He's really esteemed. He pays me. As he pays me, the guy with the hat says, don't you think the talk is getting a little coarse in here? And I says, you know, preacher, in here I do the preaching. And Leo's face got redder and red. And I didn't cut his hair for another whole year. But I got even with him. I'll tell you a story about Mike.
Uh-oh.
Mike and I go ice fishing. And Mike tips over his bottle of Budweiser. He grabs it real quick. And he says the famous words, "That hurts, Dave, that hurts." That's not what I would have said, but that's what Mike said. Oh, we were fishing one time. Sunday morning, nobody around. There's a hole that big, and Mike drills a hole that big in that hole. And he yells to me, "Hey, Dave, bring the gaff." There's nobody around. He's got a walleye stuck in the hole. I brought the gaff and I pulled him out. And he says, the next one is yours. About 10 minutes later, he's on his hands and knees and he's doing this. He got one and he got off the hook. So they were the only 2 fish we caught that day. But we each had fish.
I have that picture, I just put that picture up in my house now.
Did you?
It's on my mantle, so when you come over you can see it.
Now I'll tell you about the kids. We would go to Clarence Kozlowski's farm and slide down the hill. With Andy Sherpa, that would be a relation. David, John, Andy would slide, and Richie would pull him up with a snowmobile. They had good going. But Becky's only about this tall, she's about 4. She's got a suit on about this color, maybe a little darker, new snowsuit. And the girls take her in the barn to show her the calves. Puts her hand on the calf's nose, it's wet, she's not into that. She's a city girl. So she's walking back to the door, and they have a milking system where they milk the cows, pour the milk into a bucket, and the kid carries it to the cooler. And all these cows are backing up and splot, and she's going to get her snowsuit dirty. It's all she was worried about. So she gets there, and Clarence takes her hand and puts her on the milk bucket. It's a stainless steel bucket. It's warm because the milk is warm. And he says to her, "What do you think of that?" And she says something to make her father so proud. "Why don't you go to the store and buy it like we do?" So Clarence and I had a good story to tell until we died. Well, then we would go, I would sled them on the roads because it was after dark, and we'd go to Sherpit's. They live by St. Patrick's Church here on D. And they were snowmobiles to make trails for us. And the boys and I would slide. Becky would go down once with me, then she'd go in the house with Mrs. Sherpitt. And she'd eat cookies and drink milk, and they would have lady talk. And so we would slide until, then I could haul them home. There was nothing else to do in a winter day. And then we would play cards in a playhouse we built. I'd run an extension cord, and we'd have root beer, and we'd play 7-card stud. Becky didn't know a spade from a clover. Spades were shovels, and clovers were clubs. And we'd play 7-card stud, and she would always win. And that really irked David John, because he never won. But she would always, and she didn't know which was who. But that was good times. Well, then we took that same playhouse, and I bought a toy machine gun that sparked. And her and I would sit in there, and the 2 boys were supposed to find us. When they get close, she'd shoot. And they'd run like rabbits. And every yard light would be on, but they wouldn't come near us. You, Eddie, you go first. That's how it was. But it was just funny just to watch them. What else did we do? I can't think of something else. Something else. She said I could tell these stories about her, so I did. But it was fun times. Who else could we talk? Oh, I got to talk about Ruth. One day, my route was about 10 miles long. It's a hot, miserable day. I came home and she had a great supper for me. And she said, "I cashed in our Powerball. $7. I said, "What'd you do with it?" I know she's going to buy new tickets. "No," she said, "I went to Henshaw's. I bought catfish bait and hooks. You want to go catfishing tonight?" That's a real woman. And one time we went, when we first retired, we would go to Byers Cove and go bluegill fishing. And we went, and I get out there, and I forgot the bait. Now what? Luckily, I took her dad out the day before, and I found 4 crawlers underneath the seat in the canyon. So for 2 hours, I baited the hook, casted it out, and took off fish. We ran out of bait. It's 4 o'clock. I said, "Let's go home and have fish for supper." Good idea. So we have fresh fish. I said to her after supper, I said, "You know, this is the way life should be. We're retired, we go fishing, we catch fish, we have fresh fish for supper, we have sex after supper." Well, she says 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That I don't have to make that